Welcome to the Building Up Women in Property podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Bangura, and I'm thrilled to have you here with me today. This podcast is for ambitious women who work in property and construction, who want to learn how to have a career they love on their terms. Join me every week where I'll leave you excited and confident to take your next steps. Thanks for being here with me. Now let's get started. Hello, it is wonderful to have you here for another episode of Building Up Women in Property. And today I want to do something I haven't done before. I want to share with you some of the thoughts that are going on in my own head at the moment, some of the ideas I've been exploring, some of the challenges that I am facing, and I'm sharing these ideas with you as works in progress. A lot of this is still things that I'm working through and things that I'm really considering. And I want to give you this insight because I think so often some of the challenges that exist in our industry, they are complicated, and how we tackle them is not necessarily straightforward. There is no cookie cutter solution to creating more diversity and equity and inclusion in our industry. And there is no cookie cutter formula to progressing your career, whether you're male or female or anyone. And I think it's important that we acknowledge the nuance and the complexity of these things so that we can find a way forward that really empowers us as individuals and supports us as a community of like-minded people trying to create a better industry, because at the end of the day, that is what we are all really here for. And so I'm putting this up front. Some of what I may say, you may not like, and it may not resonate with you. And do you know what? That's okay. And I really invite you to give me your feedback. Tell me your ideas and your thoughts on these topics, because as I said, these are things I'm really grappling with at the moment. And I think many of us are. And I think the way our industry will improve is by having open, honest discussions and sharing different viewpoints and really working together to create best outcomes for women in our industry and also our community more broadly. So to take you back on this journey, I had the idea of starting Beautiful Disruptions, which is my business, back in 2017. And I'd just gotten to a point in my career where I loved the work I was doing. So I'm a property project manager and development manager, and I love my job. I was doing really well professionally, but I also kind of had come to this point where I couldn't see what my pathway forward was. I didn't necessarily want to go up any further. I didn't necessarily want to go sideways, and I just couldn't see what was next for me. And through that process, I spent about a year kind of delving into a real sort of self-discovery and really reassessing what my options were and what my career could look like if anything were possible. And to be honest, I'd never been through that process before. I'd always had a very structured plan and a very clear roadmap on how my career would roll out. I'd followed that pathway and it had absolutely served me, but I just had never given myself the freedom to imagine things to be different. And as I went on this journey, I was reading all the books, I was working with a coach, I was training, I was upskilling, and I was just talking to a lot of people in our industry, specifically women. And what I found was the challenges I had in the industry, my experiences, my frustrations, they were not unique and they were not isolated. And I realized there really was this need to create more support for women in the property and construction industry. And so I retrained as a coach, and over the last, 6 years, I have been sort of juggling balls between project management and development and coaching. And I have loved that process. I've loved being able to support women one-on-one and help them navigate their careers and build a community of incredible women who are doing amazing things in our industry. And I've also been able to continue to really participate in the industry that I love and do meaningful work there as well. But what has happened more recently is the work I do has expanded, certainly in the last year. So I've gone from doing almost exclusively one-on-one coaching work to now working with a lot of organizations in the property and construction space. And how I support those organizations is through developing teams, developing leaders, male and female, and helping implement programs that really nurture and support teams and their talent development and create better places to work where we actually prioritize people's wellness, where we consider people as whole people, where we really actively engage with conversations around equity, diversity, and inclusion in a meaningful way. And I think what I have certainly seen in the last, I would say 12, maybe 18 months, is this real shift from giving these topics lip service to actually seeing how we can implement them in organizations at scale. And the truth is, this is a difficult process. We are dealing with complex organizations, we are dealing with challenging market conditions, and we are dealing with humans, individuals who come at life with human problems and human perspectives, and we are all different and unique. And it's about how do we really bring out the best in each other, and how do we create a sustainable and exciting industry that we all want to be part of moving forward. And I think the only way we can really move these conversations forward and really implement programs is by approaching these conversations with some grace and humility and acknowledging that on the way we will get things wrong, but it's about how we pick ourselves back up and that we at least engage in these conversations and take actions in the right direction, even if we don't always get it right. And so for me personally, I've loved seeing this shift and helping to facilitate many of those conversations and being part of the change. And my business name is Beautiful Disruptions. And I sort of registered that at the end of 2017. And at the time, I spent months agonizing about what the right business name was. And I went with Beautiful Disruptions because at the time I saw how can the role of women really create a positive change within the property and construction industry so we can retain more talent and we can develop more talent so we have a better industry overall. And whilst that is still absolutely aligned with my intentions, I also think that my business has matured to a point where it is not just about women in our industry. We have to talk about leadership more broadly. We have to talk about diversity and equity and inclusion more broadly. We have to talk about wellness and employee well-being more broadly, because whilst women absolutely have challenges in the industry that their male counterparts don't, we also have a lot of similar challenges, but we also have to acknowledge there are other minorities and other people for various reasons who struggle with bias and discrimination in our industry. And we need to have these conversations at a collective level so that we can move forward in a way that embraces everyone, where we educate ourselves and each other and where we challenge each other to create better outcomes. And the result of that for me personally is going through a rebrand, moving away from Beautiful Disruptions to Rebecca Mangura as my own name, as the face of the organization, and really thinking about how I embody the values that I bring to my work. Again, through that process, I've been thinking about how does the Building Up Women in Property podcast fit in? And look, I've gone through all the thoughts. I was like, shall I scrap the podcast? Shall I change it to Building Leaders in Property and Construction? And, a million other thoughts. And where I've landed is to leave the podcast exactly as it is, as Building Up Women in Property. And the reasons for that is that, first of all, I love this community of women. Like, you are my people, and I so appreciate you being here. And I hope that you get a lot from these podcasts to support your own personal journey. And I know that for me, I've always cherished resources like this podcast that I can go to and feel understood and seen and be given practical ideas to kind of shift me from where I am to where I want to be. And my intent is to absolutely continue to do that for you.
I hope you've been enjoying the episode. I wanted to take a moment to let you know about my free Career Confidence Masterclass. This is for ambitious career-orientated women who are ready to stop playing small and to confidently create a career you love. Head over to my website, beautifuldisruptions.com, for more info. Now let's get back to the episode.
But I've really had to think about how this narrative of women in property really fits into the broader narrative and change that we are pushing for and we are starting to really see build momentum within our industry. And when I reflect on the topics I talk about here on the podcast, which I think I'm coming out to about 60 episodes now, quite often these topics are relatable to pretty much any leader or any emerging leader in our industry. It is not all sort of specific to women. A lot of these ideas can be applied to anyone who wants to grow and develop their skills in their career in this sector. But I also have to acknowledge that I personally have shied away from having some of the difficult conversations and addressing some of the challenging topics on this podcast. And when I look at the list of podcast topics that I want to speak about, there are so many that have been on my list since this podcast was first conceived as an idea that I still haven't tackled. And some examples of those topics are dealing with unconscious bias, pay equity in the industry. Do we need quotas? And I've shied away from them largely because I haven't wanted to get it wrong. I haven't wanted to say the wrong thing or offend people or share a view that I haven't fully articulated myself yet. And I realize now that actually I'm doing a disservice to you as my audience and also to myself by not talking about these things, because these are messy conversations. There is no single uniform way forward to resolve these challenges, because if there were, we would have already done it. We need to have these conversations. We need to share our ideas and poke each other and prompt each other and challenge each other so we can come up with the best solutions that will move us all as individuals and as organizations and as an industry forward. And so, I said at the start, some of the ideas I share here, you may not agree with, and that's okay. And I don't want you to stop listening because you don't agree with everything I say. I want you to engage in a conversation with me. And I really welcome you to do that. I invite you to come over on LinkedIn, and I make that invitation not from a perspective of me being right and you being wrong, or you being right and me being wrong, but from the perspective of we need to talk about these things. And, anyone that knows me will know I love connecting with people and sharing ideas. And I really do invite you to come over and connect with me in that way. But I've also just been having conversations with so many of my clients around needing to get things perfect and how we set these unrealistic expectations on ourselves. I literally had a call with someone last week and we were talking about this, and I was saying, the point of a draft is that it's a draft. It's not supposed to be 95% complete. It's supposed to be a work in progress. And the sooner you invite feedback in, the better the end result will be, rather than working to a 95% complete version and then sharing it and being disappointed about the feedback. As a coach, I'm really great at giving people perspective, and I'm really good at zooming out from people's challenges and opportunities and helping them see a bigger picture and a way forward. And it was only through the prompting of my own coach that I really recognized that I've been shying away from some of these messier topics. And I suppose my commitment here to you, and I suppose perhaps more importantly to myself, is to really stop doing that. Stop shying away from the difficult stuff and giving myself permission to be working things out, because, none of us have it all figured out. We are all humans. We all have our issues. We all have our different perspectives. We are all working through things. And the sooner we can all drop this idea of everyone having their shit together, the sooner we can move forward, the sooner we can get on with things and create progress and create change. And this is so important. As women in our industry, we need to get over our own excuses about why we don't do things and how other people will view us. We need to take a stand for who we want to be, and then we need to show up as that person. And often that will require us to step outside of our comfort zones, whether that's applying for the job when we only meet half the criteria, as our male colleagues do time and time again, or whether it's about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and letting down our guard or our armor about having to be this perfect person with it all figured out, or sharing our experiences about the struggles we actually have day to day in our lives, in our work, and in the juggling of all the things. Because this is the reality of it. Work is hard at times. Life is hard at times. But we are only going to get better. We are only going to grow if we are willing to look at ourselves and create that self-awareness and then decide consciously how we act from there and then move forward. Because time and time again, what I see is that women don't take actions in their own career because they are scared of what could happen. So you might not raise your hand in that meeting, or you might not send that email because someone may not like what you say, or someone may perceive you in a certain way. And we rationalize it to ourselves as self-preservation and the challenges of working within the patriarchy and in male-dominated industries. And the problem is in those moments, we are catastrophizing and we are becoming the victims of the patriarchy, instead of empowering ourselves and dealing with the actual challenges in front of us, we start to deal with these perceived challenges or these fears. And let's be honest, it's always easier to deal with a reality than it is to deal with the imagined fear of something. We need to stop playing small and we need to get out of our own ways in order to create something great. And sometimes we will get it wrong, every single one of us. That's okay. It's about how we recover and how we get back in the game, because we'll create so much more by doing things and getting it wrong than we ever will by playing it safe and not taking action. So forgive me because I feel like I've just ranted at you, but I wanted to share this with you because, to be honest, I've been thinking so much about these ideas and how I want to show up in the world. And, I really do consider it a privilege to get to be in your earphones every week. And I hope that you will be on the journey with me as I continue to talk about these topics and share insights with the view of how do we, as women in the property and construction industry, continue to create fulfilling and rewarding careers for ourselves, but also continue to uplift the industry, and recognizing that we need to have these conversations at a macro level as well as that individual micro level so that we can really create the systemic change that we are all after. Okay, my beautifuls, I'm going to leave it there. As I said, I would love for you to come and connect with me on LinkedIn. Share your takeaways, your ideas, your thoughts from this episode. It really means a lot to me getting your feedback. And, if you do love this podcast, please head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave a review, because it does help other women in our industry to find the podcast and support their development and growth as well. Okay, my beautiful, have an amazing day. Until next time.
Thank you for joining me on the Building Up Women in Property podcast. I'm Rebecca Bangura, and if you'd like to learn more about what I do, head over to LinkedIn and connect with me. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.